never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Jack and I had been married for 5 years, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. Sure, there were typical ups and downs, but overall, I believed we were solid. He was a good guy, hardworking, caring, and I'll admit, pretty good looking. We had a routine. I worked my job, he worked his, and we'd spend weekends together, usually binge watching some dumb series or going out with friends. Nothing too extraordinary, but I was content. At least I thought I was. Lately, though, I started noticing weird little things. Jack would be on his phone way more than usual, always sneaking off into the bedroom or the garage to take calls. When I asked him who he was texting, he'd brush it off, give me some lame excuse about work or a buddy from his softball league. But I knew better. I could see the way his eyes would flicker when he thought I wasn't looking. It was like he was trying to hide something, and honestly, I didn't like the way it made me feel. Then there was the way he'd start coming home later and later, always with some excuse about staying late at work or hanging out with the guys. I wasn't stupid. I knew that wasn't the whole story. Still, I didn't have concrete proof. I just had that nagging gut feeling that something was off and it was making me paranoid. I kept telling myself maybe I was overthinking it, maybe I was just insecure. But deep down, I knew I was. One day, I decided to do a little digging. I didn't want to be that person, but I felt like I needed to know what was going on behind my back. So I snuck into Jack's phone while he was in the shower. I wasn't proud of it, but I was desperate. I figured if I saw some messages from another woman, I could confront him and get some answers. When I unlocked his screen and started scrolling, my heart started pounding. I didn't expect to see what I did. There in his messages was a string of flirtatious texts, way more than friendly banter. The woman's name was Lisa, and from what I could see, they'd been talking for months. There were explicit messages, things that made me sick to my stomach. They talked about sex, about sneaking around, about how much they wanted each other. I was stunned. I felt betrayed, furious, and hurt all at once. How could Jack do this? How could he lie to me, pretend everything was fine? I kept reading, desperate to find out if this was just some flirtation or something more serious. And from the tone of the texts, I knew it was more than just innocent chatting. They had been sleeping together, I was sure of it. The way he described her, how hot she was, how much he craved her, made it clear he'd crossed a line. I didn't know what to do at first. I felt like I was in some bad dream, constantly waiting for the moment I'd wake up and realize it was all a mistake. But it was. The proof was right there on his phone. I stayed up the rest of the night, trembling, trying to process everything. I had options: confront him, ignore it, pretend I hadn't seen. But I knew I couldn't let him get away with this. Not anymore. I needed to confront him, but I also knew this was going to change everything. I just didn't realize how much until I finally gathered the courage to face him. The moment I decided to confront Jack, my stomach was in knots. I kept telling myself I had to do it, no matter how much it hurt. I waited until he was home from work, and I could tell he was in a good mood, probably because he had no idea I'd found out everything. I called him into the living room, trying to sound calm, but inside, I was a mess. My mind was racing through all the possible ways this could go: anger, denial, maybe even some pathetic attempt at brushing it off. He sat down on the couch, looked at me with that familiar, easy grin, and asked how my day was. I took a deep breath. I looked him straight in the eyes and told him I knew about Lisa. For a second, he looked caught off guard, like he genuinely didn't expect me to find out. But then, that smirk faded, and I saw something darker lurking behind his eyes. He immediately started with the usual bullshit. "It's not what you think," he said, voice kind of shaky. "It's just some stupid flirtation, nothing serious." I didn't buy it. I told him I saw the messages, that I knew they'd been fucking behind my back. That's when his face changed. His smile disappeared, replaced by a sick, guilty look. He stammered and tried to deny everything, said Lisa was just a coworker, that they'd only talked a little, nothing more. But I knew better. The texts were too explicit for that kind of excuse. I lost it then. I started yelling, asking how he could do this, how he could cheat on me with her sister. Yes, her fucking asterisk sister. I told him I saw how he looked at her, how they'd been sneaking around, and that I'd caught him red-handed. That's when he finally looked defeated, like he knew he'd been caught but didn't have the balls to admit it outright. He kept saying he didn't mean for any of this to happen, that it was a mistake, that he loved me, but that Lisa was just some stupid mistake he got tangled up in. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could he casually dismiss it like that? I felt like I was losing my mind, my best friend's sister. Of all people, I told him I never wanted to see him again, that I needed space to think, but inside I was just boiling with rage. I wanted to punch him, scream at him, break something. The betrayal cut so deep. We shared everything for years, and this was the betrayal of a lifetime. Over the next few days, I was a wreck. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, kept replaying everything in my head. I felt humiliated, like I had been played for a fool. I wondered if I'd missed the signs, if I'd somehow failed. And worst of all, I kept asking myself why he did it. Was it me? Was I not enough? Or was he just some selfish bastard who couldn't keep his dick in his pants? The pain was overwhelming, and I didn't know how to process it. I kept telling myself I deserved better, but part of me still loved him. Part of me wanted to believe maybe we could fix this somehow. But another part knew once trust was broken, it's almost impossible to get back. I was stuck in this terrible limbo, trying to figure out what my next move should be. In the days that followed the confrontation, everything felt like a blur. I moved through my apartment like a ghost, barely able to breathe or focus. My mind kept circling back to the texts, the secret meetings, the times I had brushed off that gut feeling. I wondered how many times they had been together and what I missed. It was like a punch to the gut every time I thought about her, her sister, who I used to call my friend. Now I just saw her as some stupid, conniving bitch who played me and my entire life. Jack kept trying to apologize, but honestly, it was hollow. I saw the guilt in his eyes, but I didn't want to hear his excuses anymore. At first, I was torn between wanting to forgive and wanting to burn the whole thing down. I didn't want to be the kind of person who just walks away, but I also couldn't imagine staying with someone who'd do this to me. The trust was shattered, and I didn't know if I'd ever get it back. Still, I needed to figure out what I wanted to do next. Should I just leave? Should I try to work through it? I felt so lost, like I was drowning. One thing I knew for sure was I couldn't keep living in the dark, so I started gathering more evidence. I checked his emails, his social media, even set up a few surveillance apps on his phone when he wasn't looking. I wanted to be sure I had all the facts before making a move. It was messy, I know, but I couldn't just let this thing fester. When I finally found more proof, the hotel receipts, the late-night texts, I realized this was bigger than I thought. Jack wasn't just messing around, he was deep into this affair, and I had to decide whether I was going to fight for us or walk away for good. Meanwhile, Jack kept acting like he was trying to fix things, saying he loved me, that he was sorry, that he'd do anything to make it right. But I didn't trust him anymore. Every apology sounded empty, like he was just trying to save his own ass. I saw right through him. The man I thought I knew had become a stranger, an unfaithful, selfish stranger. I still remembered the good times, the way he used to look at me, but that felt like a lifetime ago. Now all I could see was the betrayal, the lies, the sex with her sister behind my back. It was like my entire world had flipped upside down. And then out of nowhere, her sister Lisa started messaging me. At first, I thought it was some sort of sick joke or a way for her to taunt me. But no, it was worse. She wanted to meet up and talk, somehow trying to explain herself or maybe even manipulate me into turning a blind eye. I was furious. How dare she try to come at me like that? I told her to fuck off. That was when I realized this wasn't just about Jack cheating. It was about these two lying, sneaky, selfish people who thought they could get away with it. The betrayal hurt so bad I couldn't even breathe right anymore. I had to make a decision. The pain was overwhelming, and part of me wanted to destroy everything, to make Jack hurt just as much as he hurt me. That's when I started planning my revenge, but I wasn't sure how far I'd go. All I knew was I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. My whole life I'd trusted him. I had given him everything. And now I was left with a mess I didn't think I could ever clean up. Still, I knew this was only the beginning of what would be a long, painful journey. The more I thought about everything, the clearer it became that I needed to do something drastic. I couldn't just sit around and let this spiral further out of control. I needed to take control back, even if it meant destroying him in the process. I started plotting my revenge, cold, calculated, and ruthless if I had to be. I knew Jack well enough to know he was prideful. He'd never admit he was wrong outright, and he'd definitely try to deny or manipulate his way out of this mess if I confronted him directly again. So I decided to strike where it would hurt him the most: his reputation, his pride, and his sense of control. I dug through his phone and email archives, pulling out everything I could find: more texts, hotel bookings, times he'd been away that I had ignored as work trips. I even reached out to Lisa myself, pretending to be sympathetic but also knowing I needed dirt if I was going to do this right. I kept every message, every photo, every piece of evidence carefully stored. Then I started making calls, talking to some of his friends, people who knew him. I wanted to see if I could get him to slip, maybe find a way to embarrass him publicly if necessary. I even considered confronting his boss about his extra hours, but I wasn't sure how far I wanted to go with that. The truth was, I was angry and hurt, but I also knew I had to be smart if I wanted to get revenge without just destroying myself in the process. At the same time, I was battling a whirlwind of emotions. Sometimes, I'd be furious and want him to suffer. Other times, I'd feel a crushing wave of sadness, wondering if I was just too stupid to see it coming all along. I kept questioning whether I'd done something wrong, whether I could have saved this somehow. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about me. It was about Jack, Lisa, and their selfish, reckless decisions. Still, the pain of betrayal was so raw I sometimes felt like I was drowning. One night, I found myself staring at his phone again, scrolling through the messages one last time. That's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a message from Lisa, sent just a few days ago. In it, she said, "Tonight's the night. We're finally going to do it." I didn't understand at first what it meant. Then I remembered the hotel receipts I'd uncovered, the late nights, the secretive texts. I realized she was planning to meet him again. That was the tipping point for me. I knew I had to act fast, to catch them in the act or at least expose them before they could run further away with their lies. So I set up a plan. I contacted a friend who owed me a favor, someone who knew Jack's routine and could help me sneak into the hotel room if needed. I wanted to catch him in the act, not just assume he was cheating. I was ready for whatever came next. I knew once this was over, nothing would be the same, but enough was enough. I couldn't keep carrying this secret, pretending everything was perfect. I would expose him, and I'd do it on my own terms. The question was, how much damage would I be willing to inflict to make him feel the same pain he had caused me? That's what I was gearing up for. The night I finally executed my plan, everything felt surreal. I had arranged with my friend Mark to be at the hotel early, just in case Jack and Lisa showed up. I wasn't sure what I expected, whether I'd catch them in the act or just get some photo proof to make him admit everything. Either way, I knew I needed answers, and I needed to see it with my own eyes. I had my phone ready, hidden in my pocket, just in case I needed to record or take some quick photos. I parked a few blocks away from the hotel and waited, heart pounding, watching the clock. Minutes felt like hours. When my phone buzzed with a message from Mark saying, "They're here," I took a deep breath and started walking towards the hotel. I kept my cool, trying not to let the anxiety show on my face. I was ready to confront the nightmare head-on. From my vantage point in the hallway, I watched Jack walk into the room with Lisa. She was wearing something tight and sexy, exactly the kind of thing I knew she'd wear if she was planning to seduce him again. Jack looked nervous but eager, his eyes scanning the hallway to make sure no one was watching. It was like seeing a train wreck happen right in front of me, and I couldn't look away. I was glued to the spot, clutching my phone so tight my knuckles went white. They went inside, and I could hear muffled voices, then the soft sounds of the hotel bed. I felt sick, but part of me also felt victorious. This was happening because I finally decided to take control. I snapped a few photos through the door crack, enough to prove what I was witnessing. I wasn't going to let this slip away. I knew I'd have to face the fallout, but I wanted him to see the evidence, to understand how deeply I'd gone to uncover everything. After about 20 minutes, Jack and Lisa emerged looking flushed, guilty, but trying to act nonchalant. Jack hurried down the hallway, and Lisa glanced around nervously, her eyes meeting mine through the crack. For a second I thought she might say something, but she just hurried after him, fake smile plastered on her face. I waited until they left, then slipped out of my hiding spot, heart pounding in my chest. I had what I needed. Now it was time to decide what to do with it. When I got home, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I knew I could finally prove to Jack that I wasn't some naive fool, that I wasn't going to let him keep lying and sneaking around. I sat alone in the dark, staring at the photos and videos I'd taken, knowing this was going to blow everything apart. I'd finally caught him red-handed, and I wasn't going to let him spin his way out of this one. But even as I felt victorious, I also felt hollow. This wasn't just about catching him cheating. It was about the betrayal of everything I thought was real. I'd built my life around him, and now I was faced with the devastating truth that he'd thrown it all away for some sex with her. Sister, the next day I was ready to confront him again. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I was hurt, angry, and tired of pretending everything was okay. I was planning my next move, whether to finally end things or to see if there was any way to salvage what was left of us. But deep inside, I knew the truth now, and that truth was going to change everything forever. The confrontation I'd been building up to finally arrived the next morning. I woke up with the proof still fresh in my mind. Photos, videos, everything I needed to make him see how deeply he'd betrayed me. I didn't bother with small talk. I just found him in the living room, sitting on the couch, the same fake grin he'd worn so often lately, trying to act like everything was fine. I looked at him and felt nothing but cold fury. I laid the photos and videos out on the table between us. His face drained of color when he saw the evidence. I could see the recognition, the shame, the realization that I had caught him completely. I didn't say much. What was there to say? I just told him that I knew everything, that I had seen him with Lisa, that I knew about the sex, about how he'd been sneaking around behind my back for months. His excuses came out quickly. He begged, he stammered, he said he was sorry, that it was a mistake, that he loved me and didn't mean for any of it to happen. But I was done listening. I'd heard enough lies. I told him I didn't want to hear the excuses anymore because they didn't change what he'd already done. I told him I was done with the lies, the cheating, and the betrayal. I told him I deserved better, someone who wouldn't lie and cheat behind my back. He looked like a broken man then, defeated and ashamed. It was almost satisfying to see that, to see the man I loved turn into someone so pathetic and small. I realized I didn't want to be with someone who could do this to me, who could throw away years of trust for some sex with her sister. I knew I had to walk away for my own sanity and self-respect, so I packed a bag and left that day. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to cry, but I felt everything at once, the rage, the sorrow, the relief. I didn't look back. I knew I couldn't fix this no matter how much I wanted to. I'd lost my best friend, the man I thought I knew, and I had to start over. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew I had no choice. In the days that followed, I stayed with a friend, slowly piecing myself back together. I learned a lot about trust and betrayal, things I never thought I'd have to confront. I realized that sometimes people are just selfish and reckless, and you can't fix that. You can only protect yourself and move forward. I learned that honesty, loyalty, and respect are everything in a relationship, and without them, nothing else matters. Looking back now, I'm hurt, but I'm also stronger. I know I'll get through this, and someday I'll find someone who truly deserves my trust. I wish I could say I'm grateful for the lessons, but honestly, all I feel is a hollow ache that will take time to heal. But I'll survive. I have to, because at the end of the day, I am worth more than someone who cheats, lies, and betrays me. And I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar learns to trust their gut and never settle for less than they deserve.